Imagine an empire that lasted over 2,000 years, China's imperial system. For centuries, its rulers claimed the mandate of heaven, believing their right to govern was divinely ordained. This belief helped unify a vast land of diverse peoples and cultures under a single banner. From Qin Shi Huang in 221 BC to Puyi in 1912, dynasties changed, but the idea of a unified empire endured. Each new dynasty built on the achievements of the last, adapting to new challenges while preserving ancient traditions. This made China's empire one of history's most successful political systems, admired and envied by neighboring civilizations for its stability and longevity. It survived invasions, rebellions, and famines, always finding a way to recover. Time and again, the empire rose from the ashes, stronger and more unified than before. The empire boasted a sophisticated government, a rich culture, and led the world in science and technology. Its civil service exams selected officials based on merit, and its cities bustled with trade, art, and innovation. Its legacy, paper, printing, gunpowder, the compass, still shapes our world. These inventions transformed not just China, but the entire globe, laying the groundwork for the modern age. So why did something so strong and ancient collapse? How could an empire that seemed eternal suddenly fall apart? Many blame corrupt officials, Empress Cixi, or foreign powers like Britain and the Opium Wars. These were dramatic and visible threats, shaking the empire to its core. These factors weakened the Qing dynasty, but they're only part of the story. The real reasons for the collapse ran much deeper. China had faced corruption and invaders before and always rebuilt. Its resilience was legendary, and its people had weathered countless storms. What was different this time? The real reasons were deeper, hidden within the empire itself. Beneath the surface, cracks had begun to spread. Problems the old system simply couldn't handle were quietly growing, challenges that no emperor, no matter how wise or powerful, could ignore forever. To truly understand the fall of imperial China, we need to look deeper than just the surface-level stories of bad emperors or invading armies. We must look beyond dramatic events and famous figures, and instead examine the hidden forces that shaped the fate of a civil Samon. The Boxer Rebellion in 1900, for example, was a disaster, but it was only a symptom of much deeper issues that had been festering for years. The empire's real problems were like cracks in an ancient building's foundation, hidden from view, but ultimately fatal when left unaddressed. Corruption and foreign invasions battered the empire, but the rot was internal, spreading quietly through every level of government and society. The true causes were slow-moving crises that built up over decades, problems that crept in gradually, almost unnoticed, until it was too late. These weren't problems a single battle or execution could fix. They were woven into the very fabric of the empire's daily life. Two major pressures overwhelmed the old system: explosive population growth, which strained resources and created widespread hardship, and a global technological revolution that brought new inventions, new ideas, and new ways of life to China's doorstep. The government, designed for a smaller, slower world, simply couldn't keep up with the pace of change or the demands of a growing population. Traditional methods failed in the face of these new challenges, leaving officials overwhelmed and unable to respond effectively. It was like trying to run a modern city with the tools of a small village, outdated, inefficient, and doomed to fall behind. The collapse wasn't just about failure, it was about a system pushed beyond its limits, unable to adapt to a rapidly changing world. The world was changing too fast for the empire to adapt, and the old ways simply couldn't survive the pressures of modernity. That's the real story behind China's fall, a story of deep-rooted challenges, slow decline, and a world that left the empire behind. One hidden crisis was explosive population growth, a force that quietly transformed every corner of Qing dynasty China. The introduction of new crops like corn and sweet potatoes from the Americas revolutionized rural life, allowing more people to survive harsh seasons and poor harvests. Between 1700 and 1850, China's population more than doubled, from 150 to over 400 million. Cities swelled, villages overflowed, and every year, more mouths needed to be fed. This agricultural success brought new dangers. Farmland didn't expand as quickly as the population, and the land was divided into ever smaller plots. Farms shrank, poverty spread, and millions became desperate, landless peasants. Many families struggled to survive on tiny scraps of land, barely producing enough to eat. The government, unchanged in size for centuries, couldn't manage or tax this vast, rapidly growing population. Its systems were stretched to the breaking point. Local officials were overwhelmed, unable to keep order or provide for the people. Corruption and inefficiency grew as officials struggled to cope. Control slipped away, leading to massive rebellions and waves of unrest that swept through the countryside. The Taiping Rebellion, from 1850 to 1864, killed at least 20 million people, one of the deadliest conflicts in human history. Led by a man claiming to be Jesus' brother, the movement promised land, equality, and hope to the poor and desperate. The movement's explosive popularity showed just how desperate people were for change and how deeply the crisis was felt. The Qing government was too weak and divided to defeat the rebels alone, relying on regional armies and foreign help. The old system was failing to care for its people, leaving villages neglected and the poor without support. Population pressure had pushed the empire to the brink, setting the stage for even greater upheaval in the years to come. While China struggled with its population, the world was transformed by the Industrial Revolution. Western nations built factories, railways, and powerful new weapons. Steam-powered gunboats could now sail up China's rivers, an unprecedented threat. China, long convinced of its own superiority, dismissed Western technology and ideas. This pride became a fatal weakness as the world moved forward. The Opium Wars were a brutal wake-up call. Britain's modern military crushed China's traditional forces, forcing humiliating treaties and territorial losses. For the first time, China's elite realized they were outmatched. The technological gap was undeniable. The empire's failure to adapt to this new reality was a key reason for its decline. The old system had no answer to industrial machines and modern armies. The foundations of the empire were cracking under both internal and external pressure. After defeat in rebellion, some Qing officials pushed for change. The self-strengthening movement aimed to adopt Western technology while preserving traditional culture. Arsenals, shipyards, and modern armies were built. Students were sent abroad. On the surface, it looked like progress. But reforms were shallow. Powerful conservatives resisted deeper changes. They wanted modern weapons, but not modern government or education. They failed to see that technology came from a new way of thinking. It was like putting a jet engine on a wooden cart. The system couldn't handle it. China's new armies looked impressive, but were run by an old, corrupt bureaucracy. The real test came in 1894, when Japan, fully modernized, crushed China's navy. This defeat was even more humiliating than those against the West. Partial reform wasn't enough. The empire was falling behind. The limits of superficial change were now painfully clear. For centuries, China's strength was its centralized government, but 19th-century crises shattered this unity. During the Taiping Rebellion, the court let provincial officials raise their own armies. These regional armies, loyal to their commanders, not the emperor, saved the dynasty. But at a cost. Powerful governors became like warlords, collecting taxes and running provinces independently. The emperor now had to negotiate, not command. Decentralization continued, with regional leaders controlling modern military and industrial assets. By the war with Japan, China's forces were regional, not national. After defeat, the central government's weakness was obvious. The empire was no longer unified, but a patchwork of powerful provinces. The idea of a strong emperor was now just a shadow. By the 20th century, the Qing dynasty was barely holding on. After defeat by Japan, foreign powers carved up China's territory. The young Emperor Guangxu tried radical reforms in 1898, but Empress Dowager Cixi crushed them. This showed the ruling elite couldn't lead real change. The Boxer Rebellion in 1900 was a disaster. Cixi backed the anti-foreign uprising, leading to invasion and humiliation. The government was bankrupted and lost all authority. Later reforms came too late. Nobody trusted the court. Regional governors grew stronger, and revolutionary ideas spread. The empire was hollowed out, waiting for a final push. The dynasty's fate was sealed by its own resistance to change. Collapse was now inevitable. The final collapse came swiftly and almost by accident. In 1911, the government's attempt to nationalize railways sparked protests in Sichuan. Troops were moved, leaving Wuchang vulnerable. Revolutionary soldiers in Wuchang launched an uprising. Unexpectedly, they succeeded. News spread, and provinces declared independence one after another. Regional leaders simply broke away. The empire dissolved without a decisive battle. The central government was powerless. The court recalled Yuan Shikai, the most powerful general, to save the dynasty. Yuan saw the end was near and negotiated the emperor's abdication. On February 12, 1912, the last emperor, Puyi, gave up the throne. Over 2,000 years of imperial history ended quietly. The empire didn't fall in flames. It simply faded away. A new era had begun. The fall of the Chinese Empire is more than history, it's a warning. The empire collapsed not just from corruption or invasion, but from failing to adapt. Deep problems, population growth, technological change, overwhelmed an ancient system. Leaders clung to tradition and resisted real reform until it was too late. No system, no matter how successful, is guaranteed to last. The world changes. Those who don't adapt become fragile. The Qing court's pride and half-hearted reforms doomed it. The lesson: it's more dangerous to do nothing than to embrace bold change. Today's challenges demand flexibility and vision. The greatest empires are those that know when and how to change.